Hi, I'm Sam Tyndall.
And I'm Jack Obeck.
Welcome to Literary Discussions with Sam and Jack. On today's episode, we will be discussing Invisible Man by Ralph Ellison.
And Beloved by Toni Morrison.
It's going to be very fun.
Yes, it is. We're going to give a brief history of these two novels. First up, Invisible Man.
Yes. So, Invisible Man is a novel that takes place in the 1930s where an African-American man really comes to know himself, develop his identity, and he's reflecting throughout the novel on past experiences and really developing his true identity of what he believes. All right, Jack's going to do a quick review of Beloved.
Yeah, so Beloved is about Seth, who's the main character, who's a former slave and has escaped slavery, and 18 years later, she's still not free. She has too many memories of sweet home, the beautiful farm where so many hideous things happened to her. And Seth's new home is haunted by the ghost of her baby, who died nameless and whose tombstone is engraved with a single word: Beloved.
It's a great novel. All right, so I'm just going to go through some similarities between these both, some pretty broad similarities between both of these books. To start out, they're both African American literature, if you haven't picked up on that. They both contain African American protagonists who are oppressed by society, and both really kind of struggle with identity and past experiences that happen to them. Some other broad circumstances that are similar are just the time periods. One's a little bit older. Beloved is a little bit older, right after slavery, the Emancipation Proclamation. As for Invisible Man is in the 1930s, set in stone around that time. So yeah, those are just some pretty broad similarities.
Yeah, another similarity is that how both protagonists rise out of their difficult lives, and it ends in an optimistic view for both protagonists.
That's true, yeah. Both protagonists start off kind of in dark places. They're a little different in their dark places, and we'll get into that later, but they both come out in different ways, but they both come out in a more positive, more free identity and future. So yeah, that's just some broad similarities. All right, now we're just going to do some broad differences between the two books.
Yeah.
So to start off, while they both are African American literature, they are very different in genre, I would say. Invisible Man is a Bill Duncan, if you don't know what that means. That is a story of where the protagonist comes of age, where they develop a new identity, or they become, a man or a woman of maturity.
One of our vocab words.
Yes,
you should know that.
Yeah. As for Beloved is Jack can get on this, but it's a magical realism, and kind of sum up what is not what that is, but also just how it displayed in the book.
Yeah, it feels like it's reality, except for the fact that, well, spoiler alert, there's a ghost, and it's Beloved, and Beloved's almost a real person.
Yeah, it doesn't really say if Beloved is
real or not. That's one of the debates surrounding Beloved. But there is a ghost wandering around as Seth's missing child.
As for Invisible Man is more realism, and even a little bit of an extreme version of realism, displaying what happened to the narrative. Some more differences here?
Yeah, I mean, Invisible Man tries to accept his condition and kind of is outcast from his community
At the end.
At the end. Seth is in and out of her community, but at the end, Seth's community comes up and stands up for Seth and gets rid of Beloved, gets rid of the ghosts.
Yeah.
And Seth is now like reunited with the community, and they're all good.
Yeah, so there's a difference between communities interfering with the protagonist, whereas Invisible Man, he's a little bit more on his own most of the book, and if anything, the communities betray him and go after him, like the Brotherhood or his college or his work. But it seems in Beloved that's a little bit different. Yeah. Cool. All right, so we're going to go through some sort of themes in both of these novels that connect with each other. So a theme that I think is in both of these is the idea that slavery and just black oppression by whites has affected African Americans' identity for the long haul, and especially in this time period. And a reason for this would be, but the difference between this and the books is, well, in Invisible Man, the narrator, the protagonist, has a loss of identity. He starts off with just seeking for something, and throughout the whole book, pretty much, he's trying to find his identity, and he's reflecting on that the whole time, and very self-aware, but very restless. He goes to the black college, and very prestigious, and tries to find his identity there, but he is disappointed when he works his hardest, does everything he can, and Dr. Bledsoe, the president of the university, expels him. Again, this happens when he works and gets kicked out of work, and when he joins the Brotherhood in Harlem, and the Brotherhood goes against him and revolts him, and he eventually is living in a manhole. And when he's in that manhole is when he kind of starts to reflect and realize what he has formed his identity to be off of himself, not really what other people think. And that happens a little earlier, but it's very solidified at the end. And Beloved, though, it's similar, but a little bit different. Yeah, so in Beloved, identity is a big, big theme. So, I mean, Paul D., who is, well, kind of in a relationship with Seth, was formerly in a chain gang as a slave, and refers to himself as almost subhuman, almost like an animal, like he's cattle or something. And that's a big symbol throughout the novel. That's constant through both. Even though there's different stories taking place, there's an overarching theme of a loss of identity and a twisted of identity because of slavery and because of black oppression by whites. Yes. So, another theme that we're just going to discuss a little bit that I think is very prevalent in both of these books in different ways, but we're going to go through that, is the idea that the past deeply affects the present and deeply affects the future, and who that person is. Sorry about the wind. So in Invisible Man, first of all, this whole story, this whole novel is told from the perspective of the narrator, pretty much all in the past. He is in a manhole, and he starts off the book in the manhole and then he goes into the present and talks about the past as if it were the present, and then it ends in the manhole, and then he emerges from the manhole, and he's discussing the whole time. In the beginning, he addresses his situation, and he addresses his beliefs a little bit, what he believes, how he believes. The Invisible Man, he believes he has an invisible persona towards other people, and so then all the middle, the body of the book describes why, and it describes all of his past and how he is led up. He didn't start off like the person he is in the beginning. He develops that, and so this Invisible Man really appeals to how the past affects a person, in good and bad, because there's things that he was ashamed of. There's things that hurt him, that physically and emotionally and mentally, but because of the black oppression and because of the way he was just raised. But over time, because he had a very, very strong self-awareness and ability to reflect on his past, on his choices, and on people around him, he came out in the end with a sense of freedom. And that's just a big theme of this book, and also Beloved.
Yeah, so the past deeply affects Seth, and like it's so prevalent in her life. She killed her baby, who is named Beloved, at the house she lives in at 124, and she's constantly reminded of the baby's death every single day, and that actually physically affects her life, as Beloved is reincarnated from a river and comes and haunts her family. And so
she's negatively affected by that to a certain degree. She thinks it's positive, but it sort of burdens her.
It's definitely negative.
Yeah, takes over her life.
Yeah.
And I think that's Toni Morrison speaking on, in such a real way, magical realism, in such a real way, as describing how the past can come to life. Obviously this is something that wouldn't happen, we don't think. Yeah. But Toni Morrison is literally bringing the past to life through the character Beloved, and as an antagonist, I would say. Wouldn't you say? Antagonist? And but it ends well. Spoiler. So it does. The antagonist is defeated. But so there's both this big identity in both books. There's this idea of identity and past, which they're great things. So, well, thank you so much for watching another episode of Literary Discussions with
Sam and Jack.
Today we discussed Invisible Man and Beloved,
two great novels.
Peace. Now a quick summary of Beloved.
Yes, so
Alright, just keep it rolling. We'll start at 20. I won't make it that formal. I'll be like,
I said, so Seth. I was about to say.
Ready?
Here, scoot over.
Alright, so now we're going to do a quick little summary of Beloved.
Yeah, so Beloved is about a former slave named Seth, who 18 years later is still not free. She has memories of her. So Beloved is about a former slave, Seth, who was born a slave and escaped to Ohio, but 18 years later is still not free. She has too many memories of sweet home, her former house, Jesus Christ.